We have fact-checked that figure, and that figure takes a look at the people who are coming in and hasn't accounted for the people who have left.
A migrant in a minute is net, but the gross figure is 2.5 million people.
1 in 30 is not there. Children don't come over here and not work, do they?
This is making us poorer. It's very interesting. Everyone says we need net migration for GDP, the size of the national cake, and it's getting worse. And it's getting worse. So look, all I'm arguing is common sense. We're living through a population explosion. We can't cope. It's making us poorer, and our living standards are declining as a result of it.
Did you see the moment Nigel Farage left a BBC host completely speechless? It's not every day you witness a political figure so thoroughly outmaneuver a seasoned journalist. In a recent interview that's got everyone talking, Farage took on the BBC's tough questioning with a calm demeanor that slowly chipped away at the host's composure. By the end, viewers were left stunned as the tables turned dramatically. Want to see how he did it? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. As Nigel Farage strode into the BBC studio,
I do want to kind of clear up figures. How did you get every 2 minutes a new home is created for a migrant?
A migrant a minute comes to Britain. A migrant a minute comes to Britain. In fact, it's actually more than that. 2.5 million have come to Britain over the course of the last 2 years. In fact, 1 in 30 people on the streets of Britain today has come in the last 2 years.
Now, that figure, I will say...
Which is extraordinary. Here's the thing. Half of those that have come aren't coming to work. They're coming as dependents.
Where did you get that figure?
52% that have come as dependents. We've even allowed 125,000
Who in the future
people.
could work, yeah?
The air crackled with tension. This wasn't just another interview. It was a high-stakes encounter that could cement or shatter Farage's political credibility. The studio lights seemed to burn a little brighter, the cameras a touch more intrusive. Everyone knew this was going to be a showdown. Naga Munchetti, the BBC host, wasted no time in setting a combative tone. Her opening salvo of questions came rapid fire, each one designed to catch Farage off balance. It was clear she had come prepared to rattle the controversial political figure, employing the BBC's well-known tactic of aggressive questioning aimed at exposing perceived weaknesses. But Farage wasn't about to be steamrolled. As Munchetti's questions grew more pointed, Farage's demeanor remained remarkably composed. His calm exterior stood in stark contrast to the host's increasing agitation. It was as if he had anticipated every jab and was quietly biding his time, waiting for the right moment to counterpunch.
I'm all for people coming into Britain and British people working abroad. I'm all for it. But the scale on which this is happening is appalling. And for the Conservatives, it is a complete breach.
What's appalling about it?
The Conservatives promised in the last 4 manifestos to reduce the level of net migration. In fact, in 3 of them, they promised to tens of thousands a year. It is now 750,000. That is a complete breach of trust with the British public. And whether we got things right or got things wrong would be down to us. Now, there was a reasonable expectation that we'd tighten up border controls and that fewer people would come. That is why Brexit passed.
The BBC's history of handling controversial political figures is well documented, often resulting in heated exchanges and viral moments. But Farage seemed to have studied the playbook and was determined to flip the script. As Munchetti pressed harder, her frustration became palpable. She was used to guests wilting under pressure, but Farage remained unflappable. The tension in the studio continued to build. Viewers at home must have been on the edge of their seats, wondering when and how Farage would respond to the onslaught. Would he lose his cool? Would he stumble over his words? The anticipation was almost unbearable. Then, just when it seemed Munchetti might have the upper hand, Farage made his move. With precision and confidence, he began presenting immigration statistics. His mastery of the subject matter was evident as he calmly dismantled Munchetti's arguments one by one. The host's expression shifted from aggressive to surprised, then to barely concealed shock. Farage had landed his first verbal blow, and it was a doozy. The energy in the studio palpably shifted. Manchetti, caught off guard by Farage's well-prepared response, struggled to regain her footing. It was clear that the interview wasn't going as she had planned, but this was just the opening salvo in what promised to be an intense battle of wits.
Can I just ask you first, you're a very young political party in historical terms. Can I get your assessment of where you think you are, 3 weeks away?
I mean, we very much hoped it would come in the autumn. It's been rushed upon us. I hummed and hawed as to what to do. I finally decided I'd come out of retirement and have another go. Look at the Times newspaper today. You'll see in the YouGov poll, we've overtaken the Conservatives. We're lying second, albeit with Labour at the moment some way ahead. So we've had a phenomenal start.
Farage may have won the first round, but the war was far from over. As the interview continued, both combatants regrouped, ready for the next clash. The question on everyone's mind: who would emerge victorious from this high-stakes political showdown? As the interview shifted gears, Manchetti challenged Farage on his bold immigration claims, confident she could expose any inconsistencies. Little did she know, Farage was about to turn the tables in spectacular fashion. The contentious issue of UK immigration statistics has long been a political minefield, with figures often manipulated to suit various agendas. Manchetti, sensing an opportunity, attempted to discredit Farage's numbers, questioning their source and validity. She likely expected Farage to stumble, to reveal a chink in his armor. But Farage was ready for this moment. With a calm demeanor that belied the intensity of the exchange, Farage launched into a methodical breakdown of immigration data. He didn't just cite statistics. He wielded them like a skilled fencer, parrying each of Manchetti's attacks with precision. "A migrant a minute comes to Britain," Farage asserted, his voice steady and sure. He backed this claim with a startling figure. 2.5 million people have entered the UK over the last 2 years, equating to 1 in every 30 people in Britain being a recent migrant. As Manchetti struggled to counter these well-prepared arguments, Farage pressed on. He clarified that his figures referred to gross migration, not net migration, demonstrating a nuanced understanding of the data that caught the host off guard. The tension in the studio was palpable as Farage continued his relentless assault on the current immigration system. But Farage wasn't done. He delivered another blow, revealing that 52% that have come are dependents. This statistic seemed to visibly shake Manchetti, who appeared unprepared for such specific and damning information. As she scrambled to regain control of the narrative, Farage smoothly transitioned to the economic impact of immigration. With the confidence of someone holding a royal flush, Farage argued that the influx of unskilled labor has negatively impacted productivity in the UK. He countered the common pro-immigration argument by stating, "Everyone says we need net migration for GDP. GDP per capita per person has fallen for the last 6 years." This knockout statistic left Manchetti visibly stunned, her earlier confidence evaporating under the weight of Farage's well-researched claims. As the dust settled from this clash over immigration numbers, it was clear the tide of the interview had turned dramatically. Farage had not only held his ground, but had pushed back with force, leaving Manchetti on the defensive. But even as viewers processed this unexpected turn of events, little did they know that the biggest shock was yet to come. As the interview progressed, Manchetti, visibly rattled by Farage's command of immigration statistics, attempted to regain control. She pivoted to what she thought was safer ground: Brexit and its unfulfilled promises. It was a calculated move, designed to put Farage on the back foot. After all, wasn't he the face of Brexit? Surely he'd have to answer for its perceived failures. Manchetti's accusation was clear. Farage had failed to deliver on Brexit. The public's expectations had been high: tighter border controls, reduced immigration, and a surge in national sovereignty. But the reality had fallen short. Many voters felt betrayed, their dreams of a post-EU Britain dashed on the rocks of political compromise and economic uncertainty. But Farage's response caught everyone off guard. Instead of becoming defensive, he did something unexpected. He admitted to limitations. If I'd been given responsibility for making Brexit happen, it would have been very different, Farage stated, his tone matter of fact. He went on to explain how he had stood aside in over 300 seats to give Boris Johnson a chance to get Brexit over the line and to deliver the promises that he made. This admission was a clever move. By acknowledging his past constraints, Farage skillfully distanced himself from the current government's failures while maintaining his Brexit credentials. He wasn't denying the problems. He was positioning himself as the solution. As Farage spoke, the atmosphere in the studio shifted. Munchetti, who had expected a heated defense, found herself facing calm, reflective opponent. The tension built as viewers waited to hear what Farage would say next. How would he address the complete breach of trust with the electorate, as he had described the government's failure to reduce net migration? Then, with the timing of a seasoned politician, Farage began to outline his vision for a true Brexit. It was bold, unapologetic, and focused squarely on national sovereignty. He emphasized stricter immigration controls, arguing that Brexit had passed because there was a reasonable expectation that we'd tighten up border controls and that fewer people would come. Munchetti, caught off guard by this unexpected pivot from defense to offense, struggled to maintain her composure. Farage had not only deflected her attack, but had used it as a springboard to present his own political agenda. As the interview neared its end, it was clear that Farage had more than held his own. But little did Munchetti know, Farage had one last surprise up his sleeve, a revelation that would leave her truly speechless. As the interview neared its conclusion, Munchetti made a last-ditch effort to regain control. She questioned the relevance of Farage's new political venture, Reform UK, in a landscape dominated by established parties. But Farage, sensing victory within reach, was ready to deliver his coup de grace. The political scene in Britain has been in flux, with voter dissatisfaction at an all-time high. Labour under Keir Starmer has failed to captivate the public, while the Conservatives struggle with internal divisions. It's in this volatile environment that Reform UK has been quietly gaining ground. Munchetti, her composure slipping, attempted to downplay Reform UK's impact. Surely, she argued, a fringe party can't hope to compete with the big players. Her tone betrayed a hint of desperation, as if she knew she was losing control of the narrative. But Farage had been waiting for this moment. With a glint in his eye, he began to reveal surprising membership and polling figures. Reform UK isn't just growing, he stated, it's thriving. He spoke of surging membership numbers and poll results that showed Reform UK nipping at the heels of the established parties. As Farage continued, it became clear that voter dissatisfaction with mainstream parties was fueling Reform UK's rise. He painted a picture of a political landscape ripe for change, with voters hungry for alternatives to the status quo. The tension in the studio was palpable as Farage hinted at a major announcement. Then, with the timing of a seasoned showman, Farage unveiled Reform UK's strategy to challenge Labour in key constituencies. He spoke of targeting disillusioned Labour voters, particularly those who felt let down by Starmer's leadership. We're not just aiming to be a voice in Parliament, Farage declared. We're aiming to reshape British politics. The implications of Farage's words were staggering. Expert predictions suggest that if his rise continues, he could transition from leading a movement to potentially leading a government. It's a serious challenge to the current political order, one that's sending shockwaves through Westminster. As the interview wrapped up, it was clear who had come out on top. Farage had not only held his ground, but had used the platform to launch a political bombshell. Munchetti, visibly shaken, struggled to maintain her professional demeanor. The political landscape, it seemed, was shifting beneath everyone's feet. And at the center of it all stood Nigel Farage, no longer just an outsider, but a serious contender ready to reshape British politics.